Hi, I am Lee Bryant with On the Move Charlotte. I am here with my friend Abby Bennett with Verum Partners. And as we're bringing this video series to you guys, we just wanted to discuss topics and things that were relevant in today's world and in your home. So today, Abby's going to speak to us a little bit about her financial planning services and what you might need to be thinking about while you're sheltered in place. So Abby, hello, welcome.
Thank you. Excited to be with you.
Good, good.
I see your face when we're all at home. This is nice.
I know. How are things at home? You guys doing okay?
We are. We don't have small children here. It's just my husband and me and our dogs. And so we are, and it's pretty quiet, but the wall's starting to close in a little bit. So we're excited to have opportunities to talk to folks even via Zoom and other things.
Yeah, nice. I know. These are like anchors in my day. So I appreciate you being here. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about just the circumstances that we're in today. Like when you're checking in with people, folks are having changes in financial situations. Unfortunately, furloughs, job losses, fear of the future. So when you're in with your clients, what kind of conversation are you having?
Well, the conversations kind of run the gamut. I mean, some folks are, if we're on one end of the spectrum, people have lost their jobs or they've been laid off or furloughed, and it was very unexpected. I think the whole situation, I don't think anyone sat down with someone and said, hey, what are you going to do if there's a pandemic and everyone, is stuck at home and can't talk to their neighbors or friends in person and, have to wear masks to the grocery store and lose their job? That's not, you talk about some of those things in isolation, but that wasn't a scenario that you really.
It's not on a checklist that you cover with your clients. Like, what if?
No.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Right. And so I think there's a lot of, different scenarios. Some people are still working, but they're at home. And so they're trying to adjust there. And kids are at home, school's out. Mm-hmm. There's so many different scenarios trying to juggle work or changes in the situation. I think the biggest thing is there's been really drastic change in income for a lot of families.
Sure.
And even if it hasn't yet been realized, the first wave of folks that were impacted by layoffs and other things, I think there are still people who are worried that could still happen. Sure. And so we're having a lot of conversations with folks about getting more comfortable with their income and with their cash flow and budget. I hate to say that word, but where are they at from inflows, and then really getting a handle on where their funds are going so that they can make really good decisions about maybe where to make cuts temporarily or how to prioritize some of their expenses or other things. And just trying to get their hands and their arms around the situation. And, without knowing how long this is going to last, it's really scary for a lot of people. So many variables and so many unknowns. And so I think trying to take it one step at a time, one day at a time, and all things as you can is pretty important to just, take in what you can, give yourself grace, and really just try and get your arms around the situation as best you can.
Yeah. And I'm sure all of your clients, everyone's got a different scenario, right? So I'm sure it's case by case basis what you would really advise someone to do with, their money or their strategies, that kind of stuff.
Right. I think a big topic that we've been revisiting with a lot of folks is the emergency fund.
Sure.
I think there are rules of thumb about what your emergency fund should look like, depending on how much, how many earners are in your house, or the risk of the type of income that you have.
Right.
But frankly, the situation we're in is such a strange one that a lot of folks who maybe had their emergency fund built up maybe didn't have enough because the scenario they were imagining, again, wasn't the scenario we're living in. And so we're having a lot of conversations about what that looks like, how to stretch those dollars. And if folks are still in a position where they are, both still working or the income is the same, we're having a lot of conversations about making sure that they still feel comfortable with the amount of cash that they have on hand, and making sure that that this situation, this unexpected situation, is taken into account when they're planning, because things can change.
Right, exactly. This is your umbrella policy for your finances, right? Not your insurance. Is that kind of how you look at that?
Yeah. It's to plan for the unexpected if you lose a job, or temporarily or long term. If unexpected expenses come up, we're dealing with this financial stress, but there's also that healthcare stress too. And so,
Right.
you know, understanding that there may be increased medical costs if someone gets sick. I mean, there's a lot of things to think about. It can be stressful, but I think, again, just going back and tackling it and looking at the big picture and taking into account different scenarios that could occur, and trying to do the best you can for them. You can't plan for everything, but you can do your best to think about some of the.
Clearly can't plan for everything.
Right. Right.
So those folks whose maybe emergency fund is dwindling or job changes are happening fast, how can they best figure out what they might be eligible for with the stimulus package?
So, you know,
I'm hearing that question a lot.
Yeah. Knowledge is power. You know, there are so many details in the package that's come out, and the stimulus package, the CARES Act, and, you know, other legislation that has come out. And there's benefits for business owners and individuals and families. And so really, I think the most important thing is just try to really get a handle on what you're eligible for. You know, there's a lot of information out there. And so it can be hard to sift through some of that. And, you know, it's just probably feels like another thing that you need to try to understand and get your arms around. But I think it's important because there could be benefits that you're eligible for that maybe you don't think you are.
Right.
But it's worth looking into. So I would say be aware of, or be informed, I guess, about what's available to you, and try to take advantage of it. The funds are there, folks.
Right. And it's there for a reason, right?
That's right.
It's there for every individual to leverage to the extent that they can. And so you might well apply for it, right?
Yes, exactly. And if you aren't eligible, then you move on to other options. But it's really important to make sure that you at least look into it.
Awesome. So while we're all at home with a little more time on our hands, what would you advise people to start thinking about, right? If you've got this time now, husband and wife are at home, or maybe you're an empty nester, you know, lifestyles are changing. So what would you recommend people do to kind of do an own check-in of their financial situation? What do they need to be thinking about for planning for the future? We talked about the emergency fund already, but like what else could we be talking about with our family members?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, you know, you check in sort of what's happening now. How do I feel about things? Where's our emergency fund at? How's our cash flow? And what adjustments do we need to make? But then those adjustments, this circumstance today, impacts your future. And so from a financial planning perspective, it's a really good opportunity to sit down while you're all at home. You know, I think it's a great, like I say, we're all at home. It doesn't necessarily mean we're all sitting around doing nothing. And so, like, you know, kids are at home, some people are working, and, you know, but it's a really great opportunity when we're spending more time together to have some of the conversations that maybe it might be super fun to have. And so from a financial planning perspective, if you can sit down and say, okay, things have changed, and what have changed? What has changed, and how does that impact our future? And really take the opportunity to say, okay, maybe this priority has changed. Maybe we're going to be saving less for the near future. And how does that affect us long term? Experience has changed some of your priorities long term. Maybe, you know, I think it's a good opportunity, again, to sit down and discuss with your family what y'all are trying to achieve, and what this circumstance has how this has impacted you and your family and your future. And so when you look long term and to do your planning, taking into account changes and making adjustments is really important. And that's the great thing about planning, is that when you have a plan, you know where you need to make adjustments, and you can be flexible. Because you've got a long time to be able to pull some different levers. Yeah,
that's right. I would think that a situation like this could potentially really change some future goals for someone. And just to your point, like the levers that you want to adjust along the way. And someone told me one time, if you don't know where you're going, any way will get you there. So if you have these goals for the long term set in place, then you can kind of back into, okay, well, if we're making this much, this is an adjustment that we need to make, and that sort of thing. So,
yeah.
What about estate planning? Are you advising folks to give that a new, fresh look these days?
Yeah, you know, talk about conversations that really people don't love to have. You know, estate planning, or coming up with a will, trust, things. How do you want your assets to go if something were to happen to you? It's always critical. right? We always say it's critical, but I think it's become more prevalent today as people are dealing with financial changes, with the healthcare crisis, this pandemic that we're living in. I think it becomes just as more important than ever to make sure that your estate, that your plans, if something were to happen to you, one of you, both of you, that things are laid out how you want them to be laid out. And so going back and doing that, making sure that if there have been any changes in your family or, if any of your wishes have changed, you're like, oh gosh, and I thought we wanted, Aunt Becky to take the kids. Really, like, let's think about that some more. There may be changes like that that you want to make. And so think about those things. And then really, another thing that we think is important, that maybe also be a little bit hard is, for your families that maybe still have parents, grandparents still around, to reach out and say, hey, we're thinking about you. This isn't fun, but we just wanted to make sure that this is something y'all have talked about, have reviewed. Everything is set, because it's it feels morbid to talk about, but it's pretty important, right? I mean,
right.
I have a plan for what to do if something happens to you.
Well, and honestly, the situation that we're in now, everyone's got just a little bit more pressure on them coming from one direction or another, right? So an idea that you may have had with your kids 5 years ago, when you're living in a current situation like this, you just may look at it a little bit differently. And so, yeah, time is of the essence to make some changes.
Sure. And I mean, I want to take a step back and acknowledge that there's a lot going on, even though we're all, mostly at home. Not everyone is, but we're mostly at home. There's still a lot going on and a lot to process. So I don't mean to imply that like all of this should be tackled today. I don't think that's realistic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but taking, like we like to tell folks, take bite-sized chunks and tackle the priorities and make progress, because little steps add up and lead to great steps and great progress. It's not always the most fun thing to talk about finances and estate planning and other things. I would say it's fun, but that's my job. So I acknowledge it's not always easy and it's not always of the highest priority. So using this time when we're together with our families and have opportunities maybe more than we would have before to have these conversations, it can be productive. And hopefully having a plan in place can make you feel a little bit more at ease, or a little bit more like you're prepared. Or
that's right.
Even if right now you feel out of control and
right.
Tough.
Yeah. Clarity is power.
Yeah.
And I think right now we all just need to give ourselves and our families and our friends and coworkers and everybody that we see just a lot of grace.
Oh yeah.
What we're just trying to do is kind of educate on, okay, so in this time, what could you do that could possibly be productive, that would, make you feel better and encourage you moving forward? So.
Right. And don't be afraid to do research and ask questions and
exactly.
Make decisions. Yeah,
exactly. Well, thank you, Abby. I really enjoyed chatting with you. I appreciate you taking your time to meet with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay, sure. Talk soon.